looks really good. We didn't really stay out late. One, it was raining, and then two, we had a very long drive the next morning because we were heading to Donaldsonville, which is what my trip was all about. I did want to do some touristy stuff because I had never been to Louisiana before, New Orleans before, but really this trip, I was here to do research on my family history. I had been talking with my cousin. He's also a descendant of the GU 272 Georgetown sale, and he is a Daggs, and he actually lives in Louisiana, so he was kind of preparing me and telling me about all the things that I might want to do when I come. So the next morning, we drove up to Donaldsonville, and of course, I had my checklist of things that I needed to do while I was.
Alright, so I've done most of the touristy things. We spent the past couple of days at the French Quarter. Where else did we go, babe? Oh, Treme. So we went to Treme, then we went to the French Quarters. And then yesterday we did the French Market. Oh, it's really pretty. So I think I'm pretty much done with all the touristy things. For the rest of the time, I'm going to be focusing on my research. So today we are driving up. Yeah, we're driving up to Donaldsonville. So my grandfather was born in Modest. His father was born in Hammond. His mom was born in Hammond, I believe. So everybody's pretty much from the Ascension Parish. That's where we are headed to today.
Take the exit. The destination is on your right, River Road African American Museum.
So the first thing that I did when I got to Donaldsonville was I went to the African American River Road Museum. So there is another River Road Museum that talks about life on the River Road, but then there is one specifically, it was founded by, I think her name's Kathy Hambrick, that's her name. Kathy was extremely helpful during my trip. So Kathy founded the African American River Road Museum. Her brother is now running it. So I was able to call her on the phone, and they met me over there at the museum to give me a tour.
Hello, how are you? Good.
Family from?
So they're from, my grandfather's from Modest.
Modest, okay.
But his parents are from Hammond. And I don't have a lot of information. It's just like the census says, Ward 1, okay. Ascension Parish, or Ward 7, Ascension Parish. And then I did find out that Charles Daggs' sons, George and I believe Isaac, ended up, I don't know if they were renting a place at the Laurel Plantation, because it was like, yeah, not Laura, but Laurel, so Laurel Valley.
Like Laurel Valley, okay.
So I'm going to go there today at 4.
Yeah, that's between here and...
But I don't know, it was like 1890, so I don't know if they were I think they were probably renting from them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is our Rosenwald School. Mm-hmm. This building was moved from across the river. It was not a part of this Donaldsonville community, mm-hmm. but it was part of the African American culture of the community. It was in a rural town called Central Louisiana, and it was named Central Agricultural School because the money sent from the Rosenwald Fund never made it to the actual project.
Oh, okay.
When it got there, the school board took the money and put that money into one of the non-black schools, mm-hmm. and said they would not, support that kind of education.
Wow.
The money was then taken from them, went back to the Rosenwald Fund, and Central Agricultural School continued and built their school, and then the funding came a little bit later. 5,300 schools were built by Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington from South Carolina to Louisiana.
Wow.
This is one of 4 still standing and being used as somewhat the original structure. It hadn't been modified, hadn't been changed. We kept it as original as possible. The only thing we did was move it across the river.
Okay.
We cut it in half, took the roof off of it 26 years ago and placed it here.
Wow.
And it took us almost that long to restore it. And just recently we received funding from local chemical industry to help us bring it online.
Okay.
Right behind you, the big building there is the Two Friends Hall, built by the black men in this community. They were part of the Catholic Church Association. Benevolent halls were built to foster the needs of the community. If you're a member of that organization, these guys would come to your rescue, rebuild. If you went to the doctor, they paid the doctor bill. You had to be a member of their organization. You paid 25, sometimes 15 cents, depending on the amount of coverage that you want. Also in that building, many of the greats, Irma Thomas and many of the great musicians, this was part of the Chitlin Circuit. And so they would have performances here. This is equivalent to the Zulu Hall in New Orleans. It was benevolent, death, burial, and benevolence.
And this is the original location?
Yes.
Okay.
Was used up until 1980. Record hops, sock hops. Was also built, when it was originally built, part of the first educational facilities where kids could go and get some kind of early training, education. The men who built that were carpenters, brick masons, and laborers from the community that got together after their job and built this building for the community. Here. In these rural communities, most people went to the 3rd and 4th grade and dropped out. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. You could read the Bible, count your money, and sign your name. You were smarter than most of the others because most couldn't read, write, or sign their names.
So 8th grade, when you were that was considered finished?
If you were going on to further your education, and then during that period, they weeded you out. You know, the workers and the people that didn't really have. And then the ones that went on and excelled would go on to high school. They moved into. Remember, this school was not here; it was in a rural part. They could come to Donaldsonville and go to high school.
Okay.
Because we did have a high school.
Oh, so that makes sense that my dad only completed 8th grade.
Right. That, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
Because you weren't being college bound.
Yeah.
And so 8th grade was your basic education.
Like high school.
Yes.
Like, okay, you're done.
If you could, and back then they weren't creating scholars.
Right.
Especially in the black community. So
You just had the general knowledge that you needed.
yes.
Yeah.
And that was limited and scaled down and pushed, into corners where we had to excel through all of those dynamics.
So when we see people that finish 8th grade, that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
3rd and 4th grade. 3rd and 4th grade back then was almost like making it to 8th grade now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in this school, you got drilled, you got disciplined,
Right.
you got everything.
Probably better education.
You did.
Oh, yeah.
And then Sunday you went to Sunday school, or you went to some kind of catechism or something that extended the educational process.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't just in this school, but you were learning all along. Some families that still live up and down this river are still living on property that their families that they inherited because their grandmother said, "Don't sell this land." And you talk about bound to the land.
Right.
We're still bound to the land. And we're losing it because me and you and him don't agree. You want to live in the house, you live in New York, I'm paying the taxes. And so it gets real crazy and families fall out.
Right.
They lose the property, lose access to the property, and sometimes lose relationships.
They don't know how valuable that is to just have your own land that's been in your family for generations and generations. I wish.
To save Georgetown University from going bankrupt. And so now this building is a part of our collection. One of our past board members bought this church. It was out of commission. Bought it. Once he heard this story about the GU 272, we now have an exhibit in this church. These are the stained glass windows that we had replaced inside of this church. And we also have an exhibit in there as well.
Okay.
Made from the hands of the African Americans who were a part of this community. Those houses were built for the Italians. Donaldsonville had a large Italian population. Like New Orleans, the Gambino family starts in New Orleans. And then they go to New York.
Then
or
they go to
Chicago.
New York.
And so Donaldsonville also had a stake in that as well. There's a cleaners right around the corner called the Capone Cleaners. And all the black pharmacy and all of that was up here. Dr. Brazier, who was Dr. Laurie's son-in-law, becomes a pharmacist. So you had a black doctor and a black pharmacist in this town.
Wow.
And you also had all of this entertainment. This was like their entertainment section and business area.
Okay. Nice.
Same thing happened here to most of the black communities. After integration, we decided that these buildings were no longer valued. Same thing with the school. These schools were run down, dilapidated, and we went on to the new schools and forgot about the old school.
So during the tour, I got to learn about the African American Railroad Museum. I got to learn about the shotgun houses that are there in Donaldsonville. And it's really beautiful just being there. It just feels very nostalgic. That's just my thing. Seeing all of the old homes and seeing just how things are kind of frozen in time and how the community is taking the initiatives to preserve our culture and our history. I absolutely love it. They actually have an exhibit at a church that's around the corner from the museum, specifically for the GU 272 sale. So I was able to get a look at that exhibit and actually take some pictures and some photos and learn some new information that I didn't have about the sale. They had a list of the people who were left behind. So when Georgetown had the sale, of course, they split some families. Some of the Daggs family and the Queens family that I have were sent to New Orleans, where the other half stayed in Maryland. So they have a list of people, not just my family, but they have a list of people that were actually stayed behind or left behind. And then they have a list of the people that were sent on various ships to New Orleans. So specifically my family, we were on the Tribune in 1838, I believe, and sent to New Orleans. But it's a really great exhibit. There's a lot of resources in there. So if you are a GU 272 descendant of that Georgetown sale, and then there have been smaller sales, so maybe your family's not, so like my Daggs family, we're not on that Catherine, I think it's the brig, or the name of the ship was called the Catherine, we're not on that list, but we are technically, I guess, a part of that sale, because as research continues, they're learning that there were more people a part of that sale, they just weren't sent at the same time. So it's a really good exhibit to check out, do your research, get some more information and insight about the people that were sent to New Orleans by visiting this exhibit.
The river is right here, the end of the street, so as you get closer to the river, the houses get bigger.
Oh, okay.
This is considered uptown. Back where we were in the black community was downtown.
Oh. Just that short distance, huh? Okay.
No last names on this list, and so how do you determine?
Yeah, I really like how the graphs turn out.
On these panels back here are timelines. You can take photos of it if you want to, and have that information to research. It talks about when the church was here, when it started, and the progress of where and when it went out of commission, and when the sale took place, and how that information relates to this organization here. Again, let's see. Henry Johnson here is talking about his plantation and how his connection was to this church.
So after we left the church and checked out the GU 272 exhibit, I sat with a genealogist. She's also a private investigator named Dee Dee, as well as a historian, and I think he's also an architect. He's just an artist altogether. His name is Jim. So I sat with them because they had been doing research for years on just the River Road, that area, Donaldsonville, as well as specifically the Daggs family. So I sat with Jim to hear his story about how he came into possession of all of these family photos of people who had been enslaved, including my family. He had a picture of Joseph Daggs, and I was interested to hear kind of their side of the story why are they doing research on enslaved families? How did they come into possession of these photos? and what were they going to do with them next?
That she was born in the Jesuits in Maryland, and she names the property that she came from.
Okay.
And she was born in
1790. Oh my God, if you have time, her tomb. You should go see her tomb, which is right around here.
Okay.
She's on the main aisle of the Catholic
Right,
cemetery.
Jimmy and I
in
go.
a private tomb.
And I, as a matter of
That's
fact,
what
have a
got
little
me. It's like,
piece
wait,
of her
why is
tomb
this
that I
woman
carry
who
around
was
in my
asleep
car
on
all
the
the time.
main aisle
That's
next
means
to
so
these
much to
big-
me.
Yeah.
We all the time say, okay, Miranda,
Let's
we're
go
going to tell your story.
Miranda Rollins, huh?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
connected with the Daggs. I think there's a picture of her with the Daggs
Daggs.
or Johnson.
Okay.
Oh, I did
So
Daggs.
more than likely, there's probably a relation there,
Right.
you know?
Okay.
Well, Daggs married Eliza Thompson,
Yes.
and
And then there was
the
a
white
Reverend Jones.
plantation owner was a Thompson.
Is the Roos family that owns Modest.
Okay.
And after the Civil War, they bought the plantation, and all the slaves and all from Johnson became workers for them.
Okay.
And became not as slaves, but as free workers.
Okay.
You know? So this is the Roos family. The family gave me all of this. This is Reverend Joe Daggs
Okay.
and his wife. And then this one's Frank Johnson, George Stripling, Violet Taylor's oldest child, George Stripling, Wilson,
And you got this from the Roos family also?
yes.
They're all related to the Daggs
Okay.
because there's photos and they're all living intermingling on the censuses. So if you go through the censuses, you'll see the Stripling and Johnson and Daggs names.
And I have boxes of paperwork too. Like this is Cecile, the old nurse in a bridal attire.
He's like, go look in the comments and tell me what you see. So you had posted this photo, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to New Orleans. Let me contact her because I'm good. I was like, I'm going to drive up to Donaldsonville.
And this is Miranda.
You know, you specialize in what African American early photography.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's
Wow.
very rare.
You have Johnson, Daggs, Rollins.
Stripling,
Taylor.
Spencer.
Wow. And so they were all
Intermingled
servants and
married.
intermingle and married with the Roos family.
With the Roos family.
Okay. Wow.
This is exactly what it is, a big puzzle. We started out with just this picture, and we had all these pictures. He's like, which one stands out to you the most? And we both looked at that.
She's mesmerizing. I did post this with a story, and I got reamed out.
Why?
How dare I
Post it?
publish something like this? In other words, what is a white boy doing researching a black family?
Right.
Go do your own stuff. That's pretty much their attitude.
You're right.
And I was
But
like,
if you
I'm
have
sorry.
everything, you're sharing the information that we're looking for.
And we got
So
the-
what if you would have never posted it? When I see people that are white doing research, I just always ask why. Like, why is it interesting? Like, because for me, I do research on my own family history, and other people will ask me to do their research. I'm like, sure, I'm willing to help, but I don't find it as interesting as my own family. So I'm always curious as to why, you know, you guys do our research. But I feel like oftentimes you have access to things we don't. Like, they gave you all of these family photos. That's something like, what if you never posted it because you're like, oh, well, who am I to share these photos? So it's almost like that's the connection that needs to happen, is we have to connect in order for us to learn the history. And then you have your side of the story that we don't know, so that we can kind of bring them together.
And if you don't talk, you know.
Yes,
You'll never ever know.
exactly.
So the experience was very, very insightful. I really, really appreciate all of their information and all of their help that they've given me. And that is one thing that I have come to learn more recently, is that when you are doing your research and your genealogy on your African American family, you're going to get to a point where you can't really go much further unless you then do research on the genealogy and family and the history of those who enslaved us. So Jim and Dee didn't enslave us, but what they did is they had communication and connection to the families that did. Those families then gave them photos of our families. And I got a little bit heated, so I went on a rant after I left. I was very, very emotionally, like, just irritated and frustrated, and it took me some time to really just sit and cool down and really just think and put myself in their shoes and to see things from their perspective, which is what I in turn hope that they do.
About really is Louisiana history, and I think that's just his
But he talks about Louisiana history, and he talks about both sides, which is good. He's not just focused on enslaved people, but the lady, she only does genealogy on enslaved people. Why? That's my question, and that's why I asked her. I said, I don't think it's wrong, but I'm just curious as to why. Like, what makes you interested in it? And she's like, well, the picture, or she just seen a picture and it spoke to her. And I just find that interesting, because I don't get upset about it, but I find it strange. I find it odd. Unless they're not telling us the full story. Like, oh, these people are connected to my family some type of way. But you're okay, even if you're into history, like him, he's doing okay from the bayou down. Okay, so you're just doing history in general. You're researching both people's families. But her specifically, she's honed on enslaved people. You're doing research on enslaved people, but why?
I don't think it's weird, because generally speaking, it's always someone from the outside that does the research and history on other people.
But why?
Because they have, well, for one, they have access to it.
And that's my question. Is it because you live here and there's plenty of information about it?
They have access to it. Oftentimes they have access to it that the people that they're researching, their people aren't doing that research. They don't care about it. Or they don't have access to it in order to care about it. So, I mean...
Wait, say it again?
So, it's like a lot of historians about Africa pre-slavery or even post-slavery is done by people who are not African. And I think a lot of it is because the Africans either don't care or don't have access to those records and aren't interested in telling that story.
I think they tell the story orally. They tell the story differently. They tell the story from their family to their family. They're not telling the world their story.
No, but that's what I'm saying is I think...
It's just like, I wouldn't be going around talking about Charles Daggs to everybody. I'm telling my family, my Daggs family specifically, about our family history.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but I think historically... most historians...
I mean, unless you're a historian,
I would say,
and you're going to write about Sierra Leone history as a historian.
I would say a lot of historians are always researching the history of people that they don't come from. It's knowing other people's
I find that
stories.
interesting, because I'm the exact opposite. Wow, these houses are beautiful. Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I love genealogy research, but I really I spend more time on my own history.
Yeah, I don't think most people are like that. I mean, maybe they'll do it as a hobby, but I don't think most people are like that. Most people are interested in other people's stories.
Or African American history. You have a lot of white teachers and a lot of white professors and
like
historians
my white professor
doing history on Black and African history. And I just always wonder what made you interested. Like, why are they so obsessed with other people? Like, they have a history of always being interested in somebody else, and no good usually comes of it. You're interested in these people, you're interested in those people, so you go there, you travel there, you enslave them, you manipulate them.
But that's not always the people who are the historians. Sometimes
not the historians.
I'm saying, or even explorers.
No, I'm not saying historians themselves. I'm saying the people as a culture. The people, those ethnic groups, or whatever you want to call them, that are so interested in, oh, let's go explore. Christopher Columbus explored and discovered this place. Wherever he explored and discovered, it wasn't a good thing that came from him being curious. Well, I'm just saying.
It wasn't a good thing for the native peoples that were there, but it was certainly a good thing for the person that commissioned him to go do the exploring.
But that's what I'm saying, babe. I'm talking about the indigenous people that you're so curious to explore and learn about. it's usually not a good thing for those people that you're learning and exploring about, that you're so curious about.
Well, I would say Christopher Columbus is a bad example because he wasn't going to explore to find other people. He was going to explore to find other riches and stuff because that's what the Queen commissioned him to do.
But what I'm saying is, it's not about whether he's exploring other people or other places or other riches. You're exploring in somebody else's territory, discovering something. It's not yours to discover. It was already here. You don't need to discover it. It like irritates me because I don't understand why, and I wonder if they're being completely honest with their reasons why.
Going to colonize someone or take possession of something that is not yours, or going to actually learn.
How is it any different? You're in possession of people's family photos that are not yours.
Yeah, but didn't he say that he reached out to the family and they're not interested? They weren't interested in having it?
Not all those families. Why does he have, I'm a Daggs, why don't you give me the Daggs photo? I've reached out to you, you've talked to me, he's talked to Warren, he's talked to another family, so why don't you give them their family's photos? That's what I'm talking about. So you are in possession, you've basically colonized somebody else's history. I'm using it as a figure of speech. You've taken possession of somebody else's history that does not belong to you. It was given to you by that family. Maybe that family enslaved those people or down the line or something. He has hundreds of photos, all of the family's records, and then he restored their house. So they said, oh, here, have these photos, because they know he does research on them. Great. But now you as a historian, as a researcher, have an obligation to give people access to that information. So you're saying, by posting on Facebook?
No, I thought he was doing exhibits and stuff.
He's sharing at a library here locally, and he is doing something. I'm not saying that he's not doing anything. But what I'm saying is, okay, so now you have a responsibility to share that story, to share that information with people. And he's starting where he can. I don't know how long he's had the photos. So they say they've been doing this research for years. So maybe 20 years you've been holding on to these people's families' photos. The originals, that's the thing, is they're not even like copies. Like, oh, I have a copy of a photo, or I did some research and I got it from Archive. You have the originals of other people's family photos. They belong to me. They belong in the Donaldson archive, the Donaldson library. That's what he should do. He should donate them, let them be digitized, and share access between here and Georgetown or whoever else. I just feel like, why do you want the originals of other people's stuff? And to me, no, it's not colonization, but it's very, very similar. I just don't understand it, because I have possession of other people's family photos and obituaries. I don't need them. If I'm doing research, okay, I can take a picture, scan a copy, and give the photos, the originals, to the family that's going to truly value them. Now I can see if they're not going to value them, and maybe that's how he feels. Oh, they're not going to take care of it. It's just a picture.
I agree that,
I don't know,
that they should probably be in a museum or everything, but technically I don't think those photos were ever in the possession of the people that they were taken of. I think they were in possession of the landowners, the plantation owners.
That's what I'm saying, babe. They were never in the possession of whoever they were taken of.
So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say.
And that's what a lot of people say, is you're not going to really figure out your ancestry as an African American person if you don't contact and connect with the people who owned us.
Yes, with the families that.
And even if they're willing to share or give you information.
Now my question and concern is, how are they being preserved? What is their plan of how they're going to use these photos after that? After I cooled off a little bit, I was able to reach out to them and kind of communicate my concerns about the photos that are in their possession, and to offer my services as an archivist to help to digitize and preserve them. As you've seen in the video, we were just eating lunch. They felt like it was okay to be sitting there eating a meal, greasy hands and fingers touching these photos, some of which had already begun to fade. And it just made me just feel just some type of way, especially knowing that those included my family photos and probably more family photos, maybe of my family of people, but I didn't even know that they had. They had over 100 photos. There was a binder that you saw full of documents. I really hope that I'm able to build a relationship with them and build some type of collaboration where we can get everything digitized and preserved. Like, I don't need to have the originals, but it would be nice if they reached out to the descendants and let people know that they have them and that they're taking the care that's necessary to preserve them. Maybe donate them to the Amistad Research Center or donate them to the African American River Road Museum. Right now, Jim is curating at the other River Road Museum, and he's using the photos to kind of talk about the history of the River Road and the houses and the things that are along the River Road. But in my opinion, it's only half of the story. You're missing the other half, which is our family. So I believe that there needs to be some type of collaboration or something that happens so that everyone has access to the photos, everyone has access to the full picture of the story, which in my opinion isn't really happening at this point. So Jim, that same day that, or not that same day, but the day that I was leaving New Orleans, Jim did have an exhibit where he was showing everyone the photos, and kind of the Donaldson Library was doing an exhibit on the GU 272 sale, and Jim was sharing the photos that he had. Donaldsonville is a very, very small town. I think probably maybe only the local people knew about it, which is fine because that's where a lot of the people in the sale ended up coming to. But I just felt like there could have been maybe more of a media push, more of something to tell people what was going on and that he's in possession of these photos. So I don't know. I think that for myself, I'm going to try and stay in contact with them and create a relationship with them to try and usher them to digitize and preserve and increase access to them versus them just having them in hand, showing them to individual random people. I think they have great intentions. And then from my perspective, what I've learned is Jim was working on a house that he redeveloped. He was working on the house. I guess as the architect, he was doing some revitalization of the home. And the family said, hey, we don't need these things. There was photos, there was documents, and they were going to throw them out. But knowing that he's a historian and that he does research, they gave them to him. So now he's in possession of them. That's my understanding of how he came into possession of these photos. Dee Dee, on the other hand, is an investigator, and she actually started helping with the GU 272 research of this genealogy project years ago when it first started. And so she's kind of collaborating and working with him. I just question, is their Facebook post, because they post on Facebook often, is their Facebook post in the Louisiana and New Orleans history Facebook groups enough? I don't know. So that was another reason why I wanted to kind of do this video, share my insights as someone on the other side, someone who is a descendant of that, and help to make people more aware of the types of things that are going on, or the types of things that I'm seeing on the other side in terms of researching and reconnecting with our family. Is we have to speak to these people. We need to build relationships with them if we're going to learn and get any further in our research.
You're supposed to,
I think this is it. We're supposed to turn in there.
Here, yeah. Yeah, you've pressed it.
And then finally, to wrap up that day, we headed to Laurel Valley Plantation, which is not in Donaldsonville, but it's still in the Ascension Parish, I believe. Actually, no, it's not. It's in another parish that starts with a T. I'll put the name here because I can't pronounce it. Laurel Valley Plantation is on the 1880 and I believe 1890 census record of two of my third great uncles. So Joseph Daggs had a son named Charles Daggs, I believe, and Charles's sons George and Isaac were living at Laurel Plantation on the census record. So my thought is they were working there, they were renting a place, they were no longer enslaved, and they were working there on the plantation. So I wanted to go and learn more about the plantation, check it out, and to see, just get a vibe for the feeling and learn about the history of it.
It was burnt during the Civil War. This one, the top burnt years ago, but so it didn't burn down completely. But this is the second structure, and the guy who owns the place is still living in it, so we're not allowed there. Okay, as they'd clean, they were living outside, as the using the woods kind of like as a lean-to for them. Mm-hmm. They had no place to live, and that went on for years. So he had a place to live. He built his house, and he had a place to store his sugar. Slaves had no place to live. Then finally, around 1845, he built 13 of these. Now, by this time, he had built up to about 135 slaves, and he built 13 of these. See how it had the front porch? Prior to the Civil War, it had an open back porch too. The slave kids that were still here and the immigrant kids that were here, they needed to learn how to speak English. So she was an educator, so she had them build the schoolhouse. These, like I said, they were built around 1845. This is the original, everything that's white in here, all that. Now, we've had several hurricanes, so there's been a lot of it blow out and replaced, but everything you see that's white, because they used to whitewash everything, that's original. They fit as many as 10 to a house here. Like I said, there were 130 slaves, five of them worked in the big house. We had 13 of these, so that left about 10 per house. The fireplaces, they had, as you can see, they had a fireplace on this side, fireplace on this side, and they shared a chimney. But a pretty strong structure. But I'll show y'all some that were original.
Okay.
This house is like one of the ones like you were talking about. Now we're reconstructing it. This was pre-Civil War, except for that one. And we're making this post-Civil War.
Okay.
So this one's gonna have furniture and everything. We're still working on it. But if you look on the other side, you'll see we have a panel box. This did have electricity. You know, they'd put a fence around, they'd have their own chickens and pigs and garden and stuff so they could subsidize themselves. He had, you know, his slave and everything. He was making sugar, doing sugar cane. He was doing good. Well, they had a cholera outbreak, probably from bad water, from the cisterns or something. Anyway, he passed away, and this was around 1852. He's out of the molasses. He takes all the pigs, goats, horses, wagons, oxen, everything. He cleans it out, and as he's leaving, he burns the big house. You remember I told you that it was burned out during the Civil War. He burns the big house, and as they're leaving, they blow up the levees and flood the place.
So when you go to this plantation, they talk very little. That's the other thing that I learned is when you're in New Orleans, none of the plantations talk about the history of the enslaved people that were there, other than the Whitney plantation. All of the plantation tours are about the owner or about the industry. So when you go to Laurel Valley Plantation, they talk about the owner, who started it, how it went from this person to that person being sold because they couldn't maintain the plantation. And then they talk about that it was a sugar plantation and the sugar mill and all this. And then they say, oh, these are some houses that enslaved people stayed in, or the people who worked on the sugar plantation. These are the houses that they stayed in. So when the plantation was purchased and the enslaved people who are now free were a part of, I guess, that sale, or came with it, or that was the deal, is here's some workers for you. That's the story. That's the story that they tell. So that's what I got from it. Laurel Valley Plantation is also used for quite a few films. So I believe the the movie was filmed there. I think there's a new movie that's coming out that was filmed there. So they talk about that. They talk about a lot of things other than the enslaved or African American people that were there. So there's that. And that was the wrap up of that day.
Are getting a little bit of a late start today. I think after going to Donaldsonville yesterday, I'll probably spend the rest of my time here doing research on the things that I learned yesterday. So we're going to go to the Amistad tomorrow, and I'm just going to continue to do some more research to figure out where is Rachel.
So our final day in New Orleans, we went to the Amistad Research Center. So I talked about Kathy. Kathy founded the African American River Road Museum, but now she's currently working at the Amistad Research Center, I believe, as the executive director there. So she was able to help me because she has I believe it's the 1870 census, which is not available online. It's available in person at several places, maybe 3 or 4, a handful of places. So I was able to get my hands on the 1870 census records, take some pictures and take some photos of the census records that included the Daggs family, as well as some other people that I'm doing research on to kind of connect the pieces. After we did our research at the Amistad Research Center, we headed off to finalize our trip with the airboat tour. So our last day in New Orleans, we kind of just chilled and relaxed because we knew we were about to take a super busy flight. But my husband kept telling me, you want to take an airboat tour? We're here, take the airboat tour. It's going to be fun. So they have like the big cruise ship tour that you can take, like the something with S tour, and like fancy dinner on the river. And I was like, okay, I want to do the airboat tour. It looks fun. I got a little nervous with the airboat tour. The airboat got a little speed to it, so I got a little nervous from time to time, but it was a lot of fun. So we did the airboat tour before we left.
As you can tell, me and I'm always with
Hey guys, don't believe them.
That was pretty much my New Orleans trip. I have a lot of information that I learned, a lot of little pieces to add to the puzzle. Now that I'm home and I've gotten my experience in Louisiana, I've done New Orleans, I've done Donaldsonville, I've done a little bit of the Ascension Parish as well as the other. I know that I need to go back. There's so many questions that I have that now that I've been, I have more questions, and I've learned a lot. So I have some more pieces to the puzzle to add on the research that I already have. So I'm going to just kind of take all of the information that I've gathered, try and put some pieces together in order to plan my next trip to Louisiana. This time I'm probably not going to be in New Orleans. I've gotten my feel of all the touristy stuff. I'm probably going to stay in Donaldsonville or somewhere in the Ascension Parish and really get more of a better idea of life out there and spend more time on actually doing research. So I feel like I was trying to do half and half, a little bit of touristy stuff and a little bit of family research. But my next trip is going to be fully focused on the research aspect of my trip.